For years, the story was simple. Donald Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein. Everyone knew that part. But Melania, she was framed as separate, untouched, just a woman who happened to walk into the picture at the right time. That story is now being challenged, not by gossip blogs, not by anonymous threats, but by a legal conflict that refuses to stay quiet. And the timing could not be worse. Because as the country is burning, as public trust is collapsing, and as power scrambles to control the narrative, a very different version of Melania Trump is being dragged into the light, one that raises a single unsettling question. Was she just nearby, or was she there? And to understand why that question suddenly matters, you have to understand why this story is exploding right now. Nothing about this moment is accidental. It's January 2026. The United States is dealing with its most intense wave of civil unrest in years, following the fatal shooting of ICU nurse Alex Pretty during an immigration operation in Minneapolis. Protests are spreading. National Guard units are deploying. The country is raw. And in the middle of that chaos, a glossy 40 million documentary about Melania Trump quietly rolls out. The timing feels surreal. While one part of the nation is watching streets fill with smoke and sirens, another is being invited into velvet seats to watch a carefully edited story of elegance, resilience, and patriotism. A story designed to soften an image, maybe even freeze it in place before something else takes hold. But the real problem isn't that optics. It's what that movie is competing against. Because at the exact same moment this documentary tries to define who Melania Trump is, a court filing is doing the opposite. And unlike a film, this one comes with consequences. This isn't a battle over reviews or ratings. It's a battle between narrative and record. On one side, there's a polished media project. On the other, there are sworn filings, legal threats, and a journalist who didn't back down. And that's where this story actually begins. In late 2025, Melania Trump's legal team sent a cease and desist letter to journalist Michael Wolff. The message was blunt. Retract your claims or face a defamation lawsuit seeking damages reportedly as high as $1 billion. This is usually the end of the road. Most authors fold. Most publishers panic. Most stories disappear quietly. This one didn't. Instead of retreating, Wolff did something rare. He sued first. He filed a declaratory judgment action under New York's anti-SLAPP laws, essentially daring Melania Trump to take the fight into open court. Not behind statements, not through proxies, but through discovery. And discovery is where narratives go to die. Once a defamation case crosses that line, the rules change. Truth becomes a defense. Documentation becomes currency. And silence stops being an option. In a filing submitted this January, Wolff's legal team laid out what they claim Melania Trump is trying to suppress. They didn't present it as rumor. They didn't frame it as opinion. They framed it as material relevant to the truth of previously published reporting. And at the center of it all is a familiar name, Jeffrey Epstein. Now, let's be clear. What follows are claims, allegations, and reported assertions contained within legal filings. They are disputed. They are not rulings. No court has adjudicated them as fact. But they matter because courts don't ignore claims simply because they're uncomfortable. According to Wolff's filing, the widely accepted story of how Melania met Donald Trump may not be complete. The public version says they met in 1998 at a New York nightclub during Fashion Week. A chance introduction, a model, a businessman, fate. The alternate version presented in the filing suggests something else entirely, that the introduction was facilitated, that the social circle was curated, and that Epstein wasn't on the sidelines. He was central. The filing alleges that Melania Trump moved within what Wolff describes as Epstein's broader network of models and social companions in the late 1990s. Not all of them were runway stars. Not all of them were household names, but they served a function, access. According to the claims, Epstein hosted dinners, gatherings, and private events designed to connect powerful men with young women who knew how to be present without being loud, visible without being disruptive. Wolff alleges that Melania was not unfamiliar with this environment, that she attended events, that she knew Epstein socially, and that her proximity to Donald Trump may have originated in that space, not on a crowded dance floor. But one allegation eclipses all the rest, and it's the reason the filing sent shockwaves through legal circles. In the document, Wolff recounts a taped interview he claims to possess, an interview with Jeffrey Epstein himself, recorded years before Epstein's death. According to Wolf, Epstein allegedly stated that he was the one who introduced Donald Trump and Melania, and that their first intimate encounter did not happen in public, but aboard Epstein's private aircraft, the Boeing 727, known globally as the Lolita Express. Again, this is a reported claim, not a proven fact. The tapes have not been authenticated in open court. Epstein is not alive to be cross-examined, and Melania Trump's legal team has categorically denied the allegations. But the implication alone is seismic. Because if the origin of the Trump marriage traces back to a plane synonymous with exploitation, it reframes everything that followed. It doesn't assign guilt, but it raises moral, historical, and psychological questions that no documentary can erase. Was she unaware? Was she trapped? Or was she simply silent? And silence, as history has shown, can mean many things. Melania Trump's attorneys have responded aggressively. They argue that her name does not appear on flight logs in the same way alleged victims' names do. They call the claims defamatory, false, and misleading. But Wolf's filing counters with a darker argument that absence from logs does not equal absence from events. You don't log the inventory, the filing suggests. It's a chilling line, and one that shifts the debate from paperwork to power, because this story isn't only about a plane, it's about proximity. Which brings us to a photograph that has circulated for years, but is now being re-examined. A picture from Mar-a-Lago around the year 2000. Donald Trump, Melania, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. They're smiling, relaxed, comfortable. Wolf's argument isn't that the photo proves wrongdoing, it's that it proves familiarity, and familiarity in that specific social circle came with knowledge. According to the filing, it would have been nearly impossible to move within Epstein's orbit at that time without seeing something that raised questions. The massages, the recruiters, the girls who looked too young to be there. Wolf's lawyers argue that this is why discovery matters so much. They want to ask Melania Trump questions under oath. Did you ever see a minor at Epstein's residence? Did you ever receive money from Epstein? Did Epstein assist you with immigration matters? These are not accusations. They are questions, and questions are exactly what Melania Trump appears determined to avoid, which leads to another long-standing mystery. Melania Trump entered the United States on an EB-1 visa, often referred to as the Einstein visa. It's reserved for individuals with extraordinary ability. Nobel laureates, Olympic athletes, international icons. Melania was a working model, but not a globally dominant one. For years, critics have questioned how that visa was approved. Wolf's filing does not claim proof. Instead, it raises speculation about influence, specifically whether Epstein, who was known to help models navigate immigration systems, may have played a role. Again, this is not a finding. It's an inquiry, and inquiries are exactly what defamation lawsuits can unleash. This is where Melania Trump's strategy may have backfired. By threatening to sue, she opened the door to discovery. And discovery doesn't care about reputations. It cares about emails, calendars, financial records, old contacts. Wolf doesn't need to prove every detail is true. He only needs to show that he had reason to believe his reporting was accurate. If he succeeds, the case collapses. If he fails, the discovery still happens. It's the ultimate legal trap, and it explains why this fight has become so vicious. For decades, Melania Trump has cultivated an image of distance. She speaks rarely. She reveals little. She maintains control through absence. Supporters call it grace. Critics call it coldness. But Wolf's filing suggests another interpretation entirely, that her silence isn't detachment, it's containment. Because if she admits she was present, she admits she saw things. And if she saw things, she becomes a witness. And if she stayed silent, that silence becomes part of the story. Not criminal, but consequential. So why isn't this dominating every news cycle? Because 2026 doesn't work like that. Media ecosystems are fractured. Press access has tightened. Attention is filtered through loyalty and outrage. Stories don't disappear. They just get buried under louder ones. And a $40 million documentary helps with that. It floods the zone. It reframes the subject. It gives supporters something polished to point at. Art becomes alibi. But PDFs don't care about premieres. The contrast is brutal. On one screen, Melania Trump glides through ballrooms in designer gowns. On another, a nurse lies dead in the snow. And in the background, court filings circulate, alleging that the First Lady's past is more complicated than she's ever admitted. It feels like a let them eat cake moment, except the cake costs a ticket and the consequences are legal. Even the director adds another layer of irony. Brett Ratner, himself associated with misconduct allegations, directing a film meant to sanitize another figure surrounded by questions. The snake eats its own tail. The documentary releases this Friday. Donald Trump says it's selling out. Industry tracking suggests otherwise. But box office numbers don't matter here, because the courtroom will be full. If Wolf's tapes are authenticated, if his sources hold, if the claims survive procedural challenges, then the Melania presented on screen becomes a version, not the version, a projection, a ghost. The real Melania would be the one answering questions under oath, the one forced to confront the simplest, most dangerous question of all. What did you see? This story isn't about proving guilt. It's about whether power can permanently outrun accountability, whether image can outpace record, whether silence can survive discovery, and whether the final unresolved chapter of the Epstein saga isn't a man, but the people who stood close enough to look away. So what do you think? Is Michael Wolff a provocateur chasing relevance? Or is Melania Trump the missing piece in a puzzle that was never meant to be finished? The documentary premieres January 30th. We'll be watching, not to judge the film, but to compare it to the filings. The unsealed documents are linked below. Don't let the movie distract you from the docket.